The shrill wail of sirens and the screeching of tires shattered the stillness of my dusty ranch as 3 patrol cars tore across the dirt road, sending plumes of dust into the hot afternoon air. I watched from my front porch, coffee in hand, as the chaos rolled in. Through the dust cloud I spotted Karen Whitfield, the self-important president of the HOA from the neighboring subdivision, flailing her arms at the approaching officers as if she were orchestrating a 4th of July parade. "She's yelling something," I muttered to myself. Her voice pierced the distance. "He's in there. That violent squatter refuses to leave. He threatened me." I didn't flinch. Just stood there calmly with my mug, watching it all play out. When the deputies reached my fence, hands hovering above their sidearms, I raised my free hand in a slow, non-threatening wave. "Morning, officers. Name's Jake Morrison. This ranch has been in my family since 1952. You want to see the deed?" Half a year earlier, things were a whole lot quieter. I had just retired from a long career in engineering and decided it was time to give my grandfather's ranch a much-needed facelift. The old barn needed a new roof. The fence line was falling apart. The farmhouse was begging for restoration. I threw myself into it, and the sounds of renovation became the rhythm of my days. Then came the first letter. Crisp envelope, HOA insignia on the front. I actually laughed reading it. Something about violating construction noise ordinances and failing to get architectural approval for repairs. One problem: my land isn't part of Sunset Hills. Never was. My ranch sits a good half-mile away from their identical beige homes. I assumed someone had made a clerical error, so I tossed the letter aside. That was my mistake. More letters followed. This time it was about the old oak tree in my yard, apparently an eyesore. Then came gripes about the smell of my horses, then demands to repaint my barn in a more community-appropriate color, beige, taupe, or eggshell. All signed, of course, by Karen Whitfield in increasingly aggressive strokes. I tried being reasonable. Showed up at their next board meeting with maps, legal documents, even property records. Spread them all out on the table. "Folks, my land's been here since before your subdivision even existed. It's not under your control," I told them. Karen's face flushed purple. "That's what you think," she said smugly. "Our research says otherwise. This land falls under our purview now." "Your research is wrong," I said evenly. From there things escalated. Inspectors started arriving, zoning officers, environmental regulators, even someone from the tax office. All holding documents, supposedly submitted by the HOA, claiming my ranch was abandoned or improperly zoned. Some even said it was part of an old, defunct subdivision. One of the inspectors, a weary man named Bill from the county's planning department, shook his head as he read through the forms. "Says here your property is listed as Lot 47B of the Meadowbrook Estates development," he said. "Apparently it's been abandoned since 2005. I stared at him. "Bill, I'm right here. That barn's brand new. The house has lights on. This place isn't abandoned." He looked around, nodded. "No, it doesn't add up. Something's fishy." That night I stopped playing defense. If Karen wanted a bureaucratic war, I'd outmaneuver her at her own game. For the next 3 weeks I practically lived at the county records office. I dug through dusty archives, flipped through decades-old maps, and scanned pages until my eyes burned. What I uncovered made my skin crawl. Forged maps that placed my ranch within their subdivision lines. Fake affidavits claiming I'd sold my property to the HOA. Tampered surveys that redrew my boundary lines. All quietly submitted over the past year. The worst of it, a document bearing my forged signature, stating I'd willingly annexed my ranch into their HOA. The date? The same week I was fly fishing in Alaska. I had receipts, photos, and even flight records to prove it. I brought it all with me to their next meeting. The room was packed. Karen must have called in favors. I walked to the podium, thick folder in hand, and faced the crowd. "Good evening," I began, steady and cold. "I'm here to share evidence of multiple felonies, fraud, forgery, and misrepresentation, committed by this board." I pulled out the first sheet. Exhibit A. A falsified plat map showing my property as part of your subdivision. The crowd murmured. Karen leapt from her chair, red-faced. "You can't just come in here slinging accusations. You're nothing but a stubborn old man who refuses to follow the rules." I didn't react. Just laid down the next paper. Exhibit B. A document with my forged signature. Exhibit C. Survey maps doctored to shift my property lines. Exhibits D through J. Additional fake applications submitted to government offices. All linked back to this HOA. I ended with this. My attorney has already been notified. We'll be pursuing legal action for fraud, conspiracy, attempted land theft, and whatever else my lawyer decides to throw at you. The room went silent. And for the first time since this all began, Karen had nothing to say. The property was worth over $2 million, and Karen's face went from red to pale before settling into a chalky white. You can't prove we did anything, she snapped. Those files could have come from anywhere. I gave her a slight smile. Actually, I said, the metadata on every digital submission traces back to your personal email account. Not even the HOA's. Yours. 3 days later, I woke up to find my front gate plastered with neon orange notices. Notice to vacate. According to the legal jargon scribbled across several pages, the property had allegedly been deemed abandoned and was being seized for community use under some obscure HOA statute. The message was clear. They were escalating. Then came the morning with the sirens. 3 patrol cars sped down the dirt road, kicking up clouds of dust, led by Karen herself, flailing her arms wildly as if commanding a military operation. She screamed to the officers that a violent squatter had taken over HOA land. The lead officer, a stern-looking sergeant named Rodriguez, stepped forward and began reviewing my documents. Karen screeched behind him about threats, trespassing, and how she was the victim. "Ma'am," Sergeant Rodriguez finally said, turning to her with a frown. "These documents clearly establish Mr. Morrison as the legal owner of this land. What exactly is your claim?" She shoved a disorganized pile of papers into his hands. "These prove it's HOA land." "He's lying." Rodriguez took his time comparing the documents. With each passing minute, his expression darkened. "Ma'am," he said, "these appear to be forgeries. I'm going to need to report this to the fraud division." "That's impossible," she yelled. "I'm the HOA president. I don't have to stand here and be harassed. Remove him." But I was only getting started. Over the next 2 weeks, I hired a licensed surveyor who confirmed the property lines hadn't changed since the 1950s. Then I brought in a forensic document examiner who authenticated the forged records. Best of all, I contacted Sarah Chan, an investigative journalist known for exposing suburban corruption. She was thrilled to cover a potential HOA scandal. When her story dropped, the headline was a bombshell. Local HOA accused of fraudulent property seizures. My case was just the tip of the iceberg. 3 other homeowners had experienced eerily similar tactics. The article detailed how the HOA had used deceptive paperwork and fake claims to absorb land over the past 5 years. Almost overnight, the same government agencies that had ignored my pleas were now in full-on damage control. Investigations were launched. Subpoenas were issued in waves. The state attorney general's office got involved. Karen tried to deny everything, pointing fingers at fellow board members, but the digital trail led right back to her own IP address. 6 months after the police came to my gate, we were in court. The hearing room was packed. Karen sat at the defendant's table, visibly frayed, her usual polished composure unraveling. The judge reviewed the mountain of evidence with growing disapproval. "This court finds overwhelming evidence of fraud, conspiracy, filing false instruments, and attempted grand theft," he declared. The defendant's conduct wasn't just illegal. It was a flagrant abuse of authority and a betrayal of the public's trust. Karen's lawyer pleaded for leniency, blaming her actions on overzealous community service. The judge wasn't having it. "Overzealous," he scoffed. "Your client led a coordinated scheme to defraud homeowners out of millions. This was not passion. It was organized criminal behavior." Then came the sentence. "Karen Whitfield," the judge pronounced, "you are sentenced to 3 years in state prison, fined $250,000, and permanently prohibited from serving on any HOA board in this state. You will also pay $500,000 in restitution to Mr. Morrison for damages and legal expenses." Karen shrieked. 3 years? This is insane. I was just trying to raise property values. "You can't do this to me." She glared at me as the bailiffs approached. "This is your fault. Your stupid ranch ruined everything." The cuffs clicked around her wrists as she ranted about mailbox colors and lawn aesthetics. The polished image she tried so hard to maintain shattered completely, exposing the vindictive little tyrant underneath. A woman who believed forged paperwork and a lofty title were enough to take whatever she wanted.